Sometimes the best stories in golf aren't found on tour. You'll find them at the back of the range. And now, your host, Ben Adelberg.
Welcome to the Back of the Range. I am your host, Ben Adelberg. This is episode 75. For those of you that follow along each and every week, you'll know that I was set to interview the 2018 United States Mid-Amateur Champion, Kevin O'Connell. The interview was recorded. It went great. I think you all are going to really enjoy this episode when it posts. We got a lot of great questions from you all as part of the new Inside the Ropes segment. This is where listeners can send in questions to be included in the interview. Since we focused on a USGA champion, the USGA and Seamus Golf were kind enough to kick in a little nice swag for a giveaway. So that'll be sent out to one of our listeners. The winner will be announced on Instagram very shortly. So this is a good time for you to make sure that you're following along on all of our social media channels. Follow us on Instagram at the Back of the Range Podcast. We are on Facebook and Twitter. Go to the website, thebackoftherange.com. That's where you can get all the information on every single episode. You can pull that up on your podcast provider. Make sure you catch up on all of these great episodes coming out. Next week, as with every week, you'll have a brand new episode to listen to. And while you're listening to it, I'll be heading out of town for a bucket list golf trip to Casa de Campo in the Dominican Republic. Now, don't worry. I'm not just going to be playing golf, drinking beer, and hanging out by the pool all day. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's what I'm going to be doing the most of, but I'm also going to be creating some video content, which you will see some sneak peeks of on our social media channels. If you haven't been to Casa de Campo and are thinking of getting down there at some point, hopefully some of the videos and pictures that I'll be able to share might just push you in that direction. I've never been there myself. I'm very excited to get there, so stay tuned for that. Before we get into this week's episode, here are some updates on our friends and previous guests of the podcast that are heading to the National Championship in Arkansas. There were 6 regionals. 4 of them were won by teams that have been represented here at the Back of the Range. Clearly, the mojo is working, apparently. Oklahoma State won their regional. They're coming in as the clear favorite to go back-to-back. Stanford hosted a regional and won it, powered by Isaiah Salinda and Brandon Wu. Congrats to those guys. Texas just destroyed the field at their regional. Cole Hammer got co-medalist. Illinois won their regional. Cal, even though they didn't win, it's nice to see that Colin Morikawa is going to cap off his senior season with a trip to Nationals. So best of luck to everyone at Nationals. I'll be watching, and while I won't be there, the mojo will be activated for you all. So along with the National Championship, the U.S. 4-ball is set to start next week at Bandon Dunes. And since I'll be out of town, I wanted to make sure that I passed along best wishes to all the competitors. You know, we have a lot of friends that are there that were guests on the podcast. Chip Brook and Mark Dahl, they were the finalists last year. They're going to be there. They were former guests on the pod. Sully and Dolhide, some buddies from FAU, they'll be there as well. TJ Stewart's partnering up with Casey Dinezovich. This is his first time playing a USGA event. Elliot McCoy, Elliot McCoy, the seasoned senior amateurs are going to be there, as well as Hagestad and his partner, Derek Busby. So another team that's going to be there is Scott Harvey and Todd Mitchell. They were semifinalists in the 2015 U.S. 4-ball. We recently had Harvey on as a guest. So this week, let's grab his partner, Todd Mitchell. He is going to be our guest this week at the Back of the Range. Todd is no stranger to USGA events himself. He was the finalist in the 2008 U.S. Mid-Amateur Champion. He's competed in numerous USGA events. He's an Illinois State Amateur Champion. We got to talk about a lot of things. Very interesting episode. We talked about his previous sport, minor league baseball. He actually played in the Yankees organization. A lot of similarities between minor league baseball and mini tours. We also talked about the hot button topic of reinstated amateurs. You know, a lot of former pros are showing up at these national amateur events, so it's very interesting to get his take on this topic. So, as I said, very interesting, very informative episode. Let's get right to it. Todd, thanks for joining me here at the Back of the Range.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we just talked to your buddy Scott Harvey a few episodes back, and, well, you probably know better than anyone that he is just an absolute piece of work. We're going to definitely get into some Scott Harvey stories a little bit later in the episode. You are his four-ball partner for a lot of the U.S. four-ball tournaments. But before we get into that, Illinois, what's going on with your weather right now? Because I'm down in South Florida, which, of course, that's not making me popular with just about the entire country. But what is going on in Illinois with your weather right now?
Well, right now it's about 63. It rained early this morning, rained yesterday, rained the day before. We had 6 inches of rain last week. At this point in time, the weather can fluctuate from almost snow, it seems like this year, to near 80 degrees and very warm.
That's kind of a problem with trying to get a golf game ready to compete at any sort of level. Forget about trying to just go hit some balls with the buddies and play a little golf, but you actually need to compete. We can dive into this actually right away. How do you, being from an area in the country where the golf season is limited, do you have to kind of reboot your game every single year, so to speak, or how do you keep your game in working order to be able to compete?
It's tough early in the spring because a lot of the places that we go, like a couple weeks ago, I was down in South Florida where you're at, and it's warm, and it wasn't. It was opposite of basically what we have here, where everything's really soft coming out of winter and slow. And down there it was extremely firm and fast. So really there is no preparation for course-like conditions. We have, I guess, a warm, a heated bay range.
Okay, yeah.
The problem with that is in our area, it's been open so long they haven't really redone the balls, so it's really tough to get an idea. So basically we have to wait most of the time until some of the outside ranges open. I do have access. I'm close with the Illinois State golf team, and they have a couple simulators inside, so I can get in and use those. So that's kind of how it works. Play over the winter, try to go somewhere, whether it's with a family or on a golf trip, close to once a month, just to get out of here.
Right.
And maybe, like you said, kind of reboot and just see how things are going.
I'm just, when you're picturing these old range balls, I'm thinking, because I think we're both early 40s, and I'm just thinking of like the old, like Max Fly DDH or Molitors with a red stripe put on them, with that have about maybe 12 dimples total on the golf ball. And actually, so if that's what you're hitting, if that's what you're used to up there, this is kind of a fun question, but I always like to ask, when you get to a really posh course that has just amazing practice facilities and stacked Pro V1s on the range, do you still kind of feel like a kid in the candy store when you get to see practice facilities like that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, that because I'm glad you said that, because like for me, no matter how many clubs I've been to, no matter how many experiences I've had in tournaments, you come to one of those perfectly manicured range with just the pearly white Pro V1s that just say practice on them, and just perfect grass everywhere and target greens. It's like I'm 13 again, and I just got like the best baseball card ever out of a pack. It's like,
right.
Yeah.
It's funny you mentioned baseball. I coach my son's baseball team, and this early in the spring, we use kind of last year's baseballs.
Okay.
And so when we break out the new balls that we bought over the winter, and we take batting practice for the first time, the boys are like, over the moon.
Eyes are lit up.
Yes, and that's exactly how you feel. They've got, the balls are brand new or new. And they fly pretty much the exact same thing as the ball that you use on the course.
Yeah.
And it's just fantastic. I mean, it puts you in a good mood even before you hit a ball.
Oh, absolutely. What's the, I know, I know you had a runner up at the US Mid-Am in 2008, winning that would have got you to the Masters, obviously, but the practice facility at Augusta National is probably one of the best in the world. Can you remember what your best practice facility that you've encountered has been, just to be on there? Like, I just don't want to leave this place. As
of right now, it's 100% Pine Valley.
Really?
Oh yeah. It's so good. I mean, there's, the space that they have just at the entire facility is just vast. And I mean, there's two sides of the range, and I mean, it's got to be 400 yards to the other end where the other guys are hitting. They've got, I don't even know how many different practice greens and target greens from all different yardages. Like you said, the grass is perfect. They have, a fairway that's mown to the left side. It's perfect. It really is. It's perfect.
So you've played Pine Valley, you've played the Crump Cup, but this is the collection of all the prominent mid-amateurs in the country. And I know we've heard the name Pine Valley. Most people obviously listening have never been there. It's a very exclusive country club. It's basically Augusta National and Pine Valley go 1-2 back and forth, it seems, on everyone's list. When was your first time there, and what was it like being not just at that club for the first time, but being surrounded by all these names like, Nathan Smith and Gene Elliott and Mike McCoy and all the big dogs of mid-amateur golf, and it's your first time there. Forget about the course, but when you show up there, I mean, what's that like?
I started playing national amateur stuff in 2007. So, and I didn't play my first Crump Cup until probably 2012 or 13.
Okay.
So I had met most of them before, either at a mid-am or am or some other event that we were playing in.
Yeah.
So the field, it's not like playing against, Tiger Woods or Phil Mickelson or those guys, because, we've had conversations or played alongside one another. So it wasn't necessarily the awe of playing with those guys in the same field. It was more excited to know that you were going to play the number one course in the world, and see what it's about. And the, I guess, enthusiasm that you have for that outweighs everything else. You're just so excited to be there.
Yeah. You just don't want to leave that place, do you?
You don't really leave there. I mean,
you're on.
There's no reason to.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. That's that's definitely on people's bucket list. I don't know. You got to beg, borrow, and steal to get into that joint. So,
it's the easiest time you're going to play. It's the first time.
The easiest time you're going to play it is the first time. Okay.
Because you don't quite know where everything's at yet.
Okay.
And if you played a few times, then you'll see some guys get into some spots that they may never get out of.
Okay. So the less you know, the less you know is the better, is what you're saying.
Yep. The less you know, and listen to your caddies. They're all pretty good there.
Oh yeah. Well, I just didn't want to skip over the fact, your beginning in golf is fascinating. I've talked to a lot of amateurs, talked to professionals, and everyone has their different story. You're actually not the first one that has a baseball background. I did speak with Ryan Howson, who, played on the Nike Tour in the 90s. He played college baseball at the University of North Carolina, but you played college baseball too at Illinois State, all Missouri Valley Conference shortstop, and you actually played professionally for a little while in the Yankees organization. I love talking to these mini tour guys about, hey, tell me the brutal travel, the brutal hotel rooms, the brutal food, and how you just navigate yourself around the country. You don't have that story as far as golf goes, but I'm sure you have that story as far as baseball goes.
Absolutely.
Because you're playing Class A ball in Staten Island. I'm guessing it's not 4-star hotels and seafood buffets, right?
No, not at all. We actually stayed at the College of Staten Island, some of their apartments that they had, and they actually, I believe at the time, for short season A, right after the draft, guys made about $1,500 a month. Well, and living in New York, they actually bumped that up. The team was in Oneonta, New York, in upstate, kind of by Cooperstown.
Okay.
And then my first year was also the first year in Staten Island. So we played at the College of Staten Island, with makeshift stands, and we were very well supported. And now they've got, an unbelievable stadium that overlooks kind of the Statue of Liberty is in the background,
right,
the Freedom Towers are in the background. So, I mean, it's completely different now than what it was, but we stayed, they bumped us up to $2,000 a month. That was what we got. Obviously after taxes, it was lower than that.
Right.
We stayed in the bottom, in basically the basement of a complex. and we had literally concrete floors.
Oh.
And our beds didn't even have like a box spring. It just had a spring in a mattress. They were not good conditions.
Okay.
It was almost better to get to some of the hotels that we stayed in.
I'm just, this sounds like squalor. Like, this sounds like it would be a place that just is not fit to live. Like, I can't believe you just didn't say, like, we shared it with rats. I mean, just that didn't.
I don't remember seeing any. I'm sure there were some there.
Oh.
But we didn't even have cable. So I actually, my parents, I believe, drove my car out to New York and left it with me. So I had something. When they did that, they brought like a small TV, and back then it was like a VHS player.
Oh yeah.
So my two roommates and I would sit there, and I remember we watched Rush Hour over and over and over again. We didn't have anything else to watch, and a couple other movies, and that was pretty much it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
We didn't spend a whole lot of time there.
Yeah. Well, baseball sounds glamorous.
Yes, it's great. And then outside of that, you've got 9-10 hour bus trips with sometimes a guy sitting directly next to you. So, overnight it's tough to sleep.
Sure.
Yeah. Nobody's ever quiet until, very, very early in the morning.
Yeah, and then you got to go do your job, and you're trying to figure out, how am I going to do something to get me up the ranks and get out of here. So you pretty much, I guess, you didn't have a very long professional baseball career, but you played a couple of years. Then you start getting into the workforce, and then picking up golf. When did I know you didn't play golf in college, but when did golf kind of get on your radar and something that you like competing in? My dad was a golfer. He played in a lot of the state events, and I think he's even played in a couple senior AMs. He got me started really young. We've got old beta tapes. Most of the people wouldn't have any idea what that is. We've got old beta tapes of me hitting golf balls when I was like 3 years old. So I was introduced to the game at a very early age, and then continued to play in some kind of local tournaments just during the summer, in between baseball and, basketball, whatever else was going on at the time. Then I played some junior stuff, but, back when I was in high school, everything was, the summers were dedicated to baseball, but the AJGA isn't what it is now. Right. Or it wasn't what it is now. So I think it was just kind of getting popular at that time. It wasn't the vehicle to college that it is now. And, baseball, golf, two completely different swings. It's hard to do both well at the same time. Yeah, it's, there are some similarities, but for the most part, the movement patterns are quite a bit different. Yeah. I mean, you can do both, but you're just not gonna. Yeah, there's at some point if you're. It's hard to excel at both. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So you get into I guess you get into the workforce. I know you're in insurance sales, and you're playing in state AMs. I think you're started kind of at the turn around 2000 2001, starting to get into playing competitively. A lot of people that play high level amateur golf, you may see the job titles like real estate or financial advisor or wealth management or insurance, which is the field you're in. Yep. Could be 100% off base, but I'm just curious, did you select your career based on, in small part, the amount of time it would allow you to devote to your golf, or was it just something that you kind of fell into? It was kind of family driven. Okay. When I was very, very young, we lived in a small town, even smaller than Bloomington, and my dad actually sold like farm tractors. Really? Okay. And after that, kind of during that time, the national economy wasn't doing great. Oh, yeah. And the farmers weren't really buying too many tractors at that time. So my dad took a job at Clemens and Associates, which is where I work now. And so I was very young and kind of grew up with, I wouldn't say that the agency was new, but kind of it was going in a different direction maybe at that time, and got to spend a lot of time with the other families that worked at the place at the agency. And it wasn't that, it was kind of, since I was very young, I kind of knew that I was going to
probably head in this direction when other things didn't work out.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Yeah, that time, that 2001 was definitely a time where jobs were not fun. So, and careers were kind of off base. So you let me pivot back to a little bit of the USGA experience you've had. You've played multiple U.S. amateurs, multiple U.S. mid amateurs. I'm not going to go down every single list of every single event you've played in, but it's always fun. At least I think it's always fun to look back at some of these U.S. amateurs and U.S. mid amateurs from from the past, and pull up the match trees and see who made match play and who beat who. And it's funny, you played in 06 at Hazeltine, you qualified, you made match play. I know you lost to Webb Simpson in the opening round, but man, you got Rich. That's the year that Richie Ramsey won, and he took down Ricky Fowler in like this 21-hole semifinal. You got Dustin Johnson losing to John McClain, who's Jim McClain's son out of South Florida. Horschel's there, Kevin Chappell, Trip Keeney. You've played at all these USG events, and you see these young kids coming up the ranks because basically you're not getting into those until you were a mid amateur.
Right.
So every year you see a new crop. I know it's tons and tons of kids coming up, but can you think of maybe one person that you saw or a couple people that you saw that now are on the PGA Tour that at the time you're like, wow, okay, this kid, I might want to watch out for this kid?
I do remember that year that you're talking about it up at Hazeltine.
Yeah.
And another mid-am and I and a good friend, Skip Berkmeyer. This was really the first time that I met Skip. We played a practice round at the Chaska Town course. And that's actually, I believe, where Billy Horschel shot 60.
I do remember the 60.
But we played a practice round, and there was an up-and-coming player at Oklahoma State named Pablo Martin.
Yeah, I remember.
And we played with him, and it was kind of like, the normal practice round stuff. And then I heard him, he was kind of talking to his caddy, and he said, okay, I'm going to actually, play this hole like I would. And it was just totally different. The intensity that he was able to switch on even in a practice round was something that I don't know that I'd ever seen before. And he hits it to like 25 feet and makes it, that was just very impressive. I've run into just a few of the big name guys. I've maybe seen them swing on the range. I've never really played with many of them. The one I would say the guy that impressed me the most at a very young age was Jordan Spieth.
Okay.
And it wasn't at a USGA event. It was at the Azalea one year, and we were actually staying together with the chairman of the event, David Humphreys, had us all in a house together with some friends from Chicago that he's known for years and years and years. So we're talking to them at night, and then I'm watching them hit balls, and it's basically like the same back then it is now. Its swing was, the tempo's the same, the idiosyncrasies were all there.
Right.
And I played well the first two rounds, and then all of a sudden, and Jordan, I think he was the group in front of me, so I was maybe beating him by a shot or two. And he was the number one ranked junior in the world, and I'm kind of thinking to myself, I'm this guy with a job, and this is the number one ranked junior in the world. How good is he really?
Right, sure.
And all of a sudden, the last day, the wind switched, it picked up, it cooled off, and I'm playing each hole with both hands on the steering wheel, try to keep it, on the road.
Right.
And Jordan shoots 64.
Okay,
So that kind of opened my eyes. Okay, yeah. And that, I wouldn't say that was the first time that it really took effect, like how good the high school and college players are now.
Right.
But it's a different level. I mean, it's taken on a whole different direction, and the facilities that they have access to. I mean, the talent level and the commitment level is unbelievable.
It's interesting that you mentioned the youth movement, so to speak. You're talking about Spieth, who's world-class player, but you've played with Scott Harvey in the U.S. 4-ball, and the U.S. 4-ball, the first time was that the inaugural event, you were a semifinalist with Harvey there. I think that was 2015, yep. And that was created not necessarily to replace, but it was created kind of after the USAM Pub Links was removed. And I think, if I remember correctly, the USGA removed it because it had turned into basically just another U.S. Amateur, because college players were able to play the Pub Links because they didn't consider being on a college golf team necessarily a private membership. So that was kind of a loophole where you'd have these college stars coming in there that had access to all these university facilities, and they were running through there. So they got rid of that. But then I look even after I think it was, Todd White, Nathan Smith won in 2015. But when you look at the winners of the 4-ball in 16, 17, and 18, they're all high school kids.
Yeah.
Even last year, we had Cole Hammer and Garrett Barber on last year on the podcast. They won it last year, but they're all like college players, freshmen, they're young kids. You've been at this event. You've played it with Harvey. Do you kind of get that feel that this tournament is kind of, it's all walks of life, but does it have more of a feel that, these young kids are just kind of, they're the strong ones in this tournament?
I don't know that year in and year out it will be like that.
Okay.
Obviously Cole was one of the, he was ranked extremely high.
Oh, yeah.
Coming in, even as a incoming freshman last fall. And you got to see, how good they really are, because Scott and I, we played very well the first round. And then, I thought we had a chance to be medalists, and we really weren't even close. I think we had like a 4 or 5 seed and were beat by 2 or 3 shots for being medalist after stroke play. But we played with...
And this is Jupiter Hills last year down in,
yep.
This Jupiter Hills, very, very historic golf course right up in the Jupiter, Florida area.
And it's a fantastic place.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the high school or youth movement, Scott and I played with Frankie Capon and Ben Wong at Wingfoot in the stroke play portion. And they were, we were those 3 years ago. So we were, late 30s, 37, and, these kids were 16 years old.
Yeah.
And then we make match play, and they did too. And the first round we play is against Shigeki Mariyama's son. And they were like 15.
Oh, God.
So their ages together don't equal one of us, and then fast forward 1 year at Pinehurst, and Frankie and Ben win.
Of course, yeah.
And I'm not sure that every year we'll have a high school team winning, but there are going to be some teams that play in the 4-ball that are multiple teams that are high school kids that are extremely talented that will definitely compete year in and year out. I don't know that every year that somebody will win like that, but because there's a lot of really good mid-ams and other college players that aren't playing in the NCAAs that have a great chance of winning as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You meant, we're talking about Harvey. You guys kind of got put together or met. Harvey's from North Carolina. You're from Illinois. I think you guys met around 2010 at the USGA State Team Championships. What makes your partnership? And we can speak to. We can go down a rabbit hole of questions about 4-ball and how do partners get along. But what are some of the strengths? What are some of the things you got to kind of stay away from? But what are some of the things that make your team work? Other than everyone can play at that level, but what makes your team work? You think?
I think what makes us so I guess successful.
You can say successful. You made semis at the US 4-ball. We can safely say that you guys are successful.
And because of my ranking, we have to qualify if we don't make it to the semis every year. And we've had to qualify. I think this is our 5th one. We've had to qualify 4 times at all different spots. So we've been successful that way.
Sure.
We've had really good rounds and played really good matches there. So I think we have we tend to grind it out very well when things or conditions aren't the greatest or we're not playing the greatest. We tend to get as much out of that round as possible. but I think it's not, I don't know that we view how to play the same way. But we kind of let each other do what they do. And, you know, if we have a question or we need to discuss something, then we do it. If not, you know, just go play.
Sure.
And we kind of stay out of each other's way, you know, and then we have a lot of fun on the course. You know, there's, you know, during a 4.5 or 5 hour round, there's a lot of downtime, and we joke around, we tell stories, you know, just conversations. I mean, we laugh a lot, and, you know, we just have a good time. I think we really just enjoy being out there and playing 4-ball.
So it sounds to me also, it's like you kind of take on the role of you're the caddy for Scott Harvey, and he's the caddy for Todd Mitchell, and trying to keep each other light and not talk about golf for 5 hours, and try and keep your minds occupied on other things. I mean, is that pretty much a safe way to say it right there?
Yeah, and neither of us have the best attention span anyway. Okay. So to try to focus on something for that long, it wouldn't work for us very well anyway.
Nice. What are some of the things you guys talk about? Because I talked to Harvey, and man, he was so good. I mean, just like that's the guy. You know, we're talking, and he's just like, yeah, well, you know, when I'm not playing these big ass tournaments, I just like getting a cooler beer on the golf course and getting the speaker going, and I like playing in hit and giggle scrambles. I'm like, who are you? Like, what are you talking about?
He's I haven't played. I went on a golf trip with him one time. Okay. That didn't have anything to do with the tournament, and it's definitely like that. Yeah, you know, you have a good time, you relax. We did race around in carts. I don't remember having a speaker, but there were some beverages consumed, and just relax and have a good time. You know, that's the lighter side. You know, we do enjoy the competition, but we also just like being out there and having fun.
I can't imagine what a golf trip with Scott Harvey looks like, but it can't be that. It can't be that serious. You didn't play the mini tour. You didn't go the mini tour route. You didn't play professionally. True amateur. Been an amateur entire life. I think if I remember correctly, I think either last year's U.S. Mid-Am or one of the previous ones, they actually looked at the field and saw that maybe the number was 30%, 40%. I can't remember exactly, but it was a pretty substantial number of the competitors at the U.S. Mid-Am that had been professionals previously.
Yep.
So I know it's kind of I guess it could be like a hot button topic and could be debated for hours and hours, but do you have thoughts on having reinstated amateurs playing at such prestigious amateur events with things like U.S. Open and Masters exemptions on the other end?
I definitely think this is a hot button topic. Depending on who you talk to, they Sure. would have either the same opinion of mine or possibly even the opposite. You know, I'm friends with guys that have good careers on tour. They may not have lasted long, but they've played in, you know, for several years on either the PGA Tour or the Web Tour, that for one reason or another are now reinstated. It's nothing, you know, I don't have anything against the guys.
Right.
For doing
it's not an individual thing. It's just more it's the rule itself. I mean, the rules are the
right.
rules. So, right.
And I don't have the answers of, when is enough? When can't you become reinstated, or when, does a reinstatement last longer than a year or 2 years or anything like that? I think that the biggest one that has kind of really sparked this entire topic would be with John Peterson, what he has done the last year,
right,
where he basically said, I'm going to give this one last chance, and if this doesn't work, I'm done, I'm retiring, you know, I'm going to go sell houses or whatever. And then all of a sudden now he's said that he's not retired anymore. So, but a guy like John Peterson, who has competed basically almost every year, maybe the year after he got out of college, and played on the tour with, you know, maybe not the highest level of success, but he definitely was close to winning. I don't know if he won or not, but I know a few times he was close to winning. made a ton of money. That's it. That's at that point in time, you have decided that you are a professional. And if you choose that, then why wait, a couple of years and then go ahead and compete against, mid-ams or amateurs or whatever. His thing, I'm sure, was, oh, well, now I can play in the U.S. Open as an amateur. I can win the mid-am and go play at Augusta.
Right.
Those type of things. But I think, to be fair to the other people, and even guys that, have played on, let's say, mini tours for 5 or 6 years or whatever, and thought about it, and, tried to get to the web tour, tried to do these things. You know what? I'm not sure that they have made a complete career move. Were they dedicated in trying to get there? Yes. But playing on the PGA or web tour is a lot different than playing on, the Hooters tour.
Of course, yeah.
So I think at that point, if you've played on one, the European tour, the Asian tour, or web tour, PGA tour, that sort of thing, and you've been out there for a long time, I think the waiting period has to be long enough where you have to make a difficult decision.
I completely agree. And I've actually talked to people and kicked around the idea of saying, okay, if you want to get your status back before the age of 20, or if you want to get your amateur status back and you do it before the age of 25, I really don't have a problem with that either, because, hey, you played in college, or you gave it a run. And, if you really don't find too much success by the age of 25 and you just shut it down and get your amateur status back, I don't see a real big problem with that. I kind of think back to, like you have a guy that's worked his whole career and he finds his way into a U.S. mid-am. It's his first time. It's a dream for him. And he navigates his way somehow through stroke play. And, oh, my God, he's into match play. And he's got the dream of, hey, if I can just get on a run here and win 6 matches and get to the final, and I got a shot to play 36 holes against another guy to have a chance to play in the Masters, what a dream that would be. And, it just all depends. But, what if you get into that match and you're in the round of 64 and you're playing against a guy that has 6, 7, 8, 9 years of professional experience behind him? And I don't know, it just doesn't feel right, I guess.
And there are certain aspects that, if you've played professionally at that high of a level, or on the PGA Tour at the highest level, it doesn't matter the waiting period that you have to sit out, because there are certain things that you will always retain.
Right. Yeah.
And those are an advantage over other people. I can think of one person who kind of defies my thinking on this, and that is a guy from Vegas named Ed Fryatt. I met Ed a few years ago. He's a great guy, former tour player. I believe he won on the European tour. He lost his card, then went to the web tour, and I think I don't know if this is accurate or not, he missed something like 19 out of 20 cuts on the web tour and said, I'm done.
Right.
He then starts up his own insurance agency and doesn't play a competitive round of golf for 10 years.
Okay.
I think he went to UNLV. I think he told me he played in the UNLV golf outing, and maybe just occasionally with his friends, but basically didn't pick up a club very often at all, got into mountain biking and some other things like that, and then decides, okay, well, I'm going to try to play golf again. I think that type of situation is completely different than a lot of these others. He waited 10 years.
Yeah.
It's not just like, oh, well, I didn't really make it on tour, or I'm not having the success that I want to on either the web or the PGA Tour or European Tour or wherever. I'm just going to wait a couple of years, get my reinstated, and then keep playing. Well, I don't.
It's definitely a case by case basis. You're 100% right. I mean, I'm looking at Ed Fryatt's information now. I mean, this guy's played in the U.S. Open in '97. He had 4 wins on the Asian Tour. He won a nationwide tour event. He won it in 1999. But it can be debated and discussed. I think the real issue is what would you see all of these reinstated amateurs that used to be professionals, would they all enter the U.S. Mid-Amateur knowing that there was some sort of a rule that would immediately disqualify them from getting the Masters invite? That would be fascinating to see if that was put into place.
Yeah, I still think that they would play. And as far as not being in a Masters invite.
Yeah, I mean that would. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the answer to it.
I don't know that I would. I don't know that I would agree with that. But I think the USGA has to make a decision and kind of let everybody know, hey, this is our decision.
Right.
These are the parameters, but nobody knows.
Yeah.
If I'm playing on the web.com tour for like 5 years and all of a sudden, things aren't, maybe I've started a family and things like that.
Yeah.
So I've got to change, and I haven't had that great a success. And now, okay, I want to get reinstated. Rather than sending in their reinstatement into the USGA and then going, okay, well, I don't really know how long I have to wait until I get the letter back. You should know. They should have a formula set up in place that basically says, okay, if you played on the Hooters Tour for 5 years and you did this, or if you played on the web tour and, you missed every cut for 4 years, and then somehow found your way back via Q School. Okay, well, that might be a little bit different than a guy that played for 4 years and made $300,000 a year for 4 years.
It's a very, it'll be debated and discussed probably for quite a long time. And
yeah, and I try to come at it from both sides. Obviously I was never a professional, but I think there is a level of fairness to both sides.
No, you're 100% right. Yeah, it's something that needs to be really looked at. Figure out a direction that needs to go in. That way it's fair to the amateurs that never turn pro, and then also something that allows former professionals that didn't find success a place to play and to compete, because that's, we want to keep golf as open and as inclusive as possible.
100% agree.
Yeah. So let me ask you this question, because I want to tie back. You've had great success on the national side. You've had great success, locally and state tournaments. You play a lot of Chicago District Golf Association events. How important is it for the state events? You're at the kind of the top of the chain. You've won multiple mid amateurs. You've won Illinois State Amateur events. How important is that association in keeping your competitive, keeping the competitive juices going while you prepare for national events?
I think they are very important, in terms of, most of the events are kind of in a different, or at a different time than some of the national events. I know that as much as I'd like to, I'm not going to qualify for the USAM every year. Our state am is, it used to be at the time that the USAM is now, and they moved it up a couple of weeks. So that's always a really good preparer for years that you do make the USAM. They do as good a job as they can at getting the golf course, to tournament conditions, like a USGA level.
Sure.
So some years they're able to do that. A lot of it depends on the weather. Some years they're able to do that very closely, and other years, it's just a little different. But I'd say they're very important, more so than anything else. Over the years, I've got friends that I see at state events just like I do at national events, and it's a good time to catch up with them and see them and really enjoy it.
What I've seen some of the numbers decline in some of the golf associations down here in Florida. Everyone's busy, everyone has things going on with kids and things like that. But do you find that the numbers kind of have kind of cut down or fallen off in the last several years? And what are maybe some of your thoughts about, like, let's say, the guy listening to this podcast or the woman listening to this podcast that, maybe they shoot 77 or 78 consistently. Maybe they'll throw in a 73 every once in a while, but then also throw in an 81 or an 82 every once in a while. And maybe they can't compete day in and day out against Todd Mitchell or, guys at that level like yourself. What are some of the things that we can do, that golf can do, to make it more inclusive to maybe the higher handicappers to play competitively?
There are some national events, like I believe the Golf Channel or Golf Week has, or the GC Am Tour, stuff like that. A lot of times the biggest event that for a lot of guys is like their member guest or their club championship or something like that, playing against the guys that are their same handicap levels. So if you're a guy that's, let's say, just a 15 handicapper, and there's another guy that's a 13 and another guy that's a 16. Well, is it better to go out and everybody gets a shot on their 13 holes or 15 holes or 16 holes, or tee it up and we're just going to go play and there's no strokes? I think that could be an interesting way to go about it. And a lot of times that happens, like at your member guest events or your club championships. I think that's a great way to do it. I don't know that the state level, just because of time and effort,
sure,
and the cost at putting on a tournament. I don't know. I know we have some like one-day events that like 4-ball events that you can do,
right?
That have different handicap divisions and things like that. A lot of times the best way to do it is just have a great group of friends that like to gamble and go out there and throw in the line. And, a lot of times that's better than, traveling a couple hours and going to play at a place that maybe you're not familiar with. And, there's a lot to be said about competing against friends.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think everyone likes, putting a couple bucks in and having a couple beers afterwards and getting after it.
Yep.
Let me get you out of here with just a one or two more quick questions. What is on your bucket list as far as golf travel? I love giving all of our listeners ideas on places to go. I took a trip last year at Cabot Links up in Nova Scotia, which was incredible. I have a couple trips coming up. I know everyone is kind of maybe getting their calendars together for the summer, getting their buddies on the same page. What are some of the places you've been to, or what are some of the places that are on your list? As someone that's played, as you said, you've played Pine Valley, you've played some of the bigger clubs in the country. Is there anything left on your list?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've been over to Scotland once, but it was, 15 or 16 years ago, and, played pretty much all the ones that you've heard of, Troon and Carnoustie and yep. Turnberry on that side. And the one thing that I did not do is we had to go into the draw to get it at St. Andrews, and that would have been in the morning, and there was no guarantees of whether you were going to get in the draw or not.
Yeah.
And that afternoon we were able to play at a place that's called King's Barnes, and that was already set in stone.
Yep.
And I heard that it was really good, and because of that, I did not put my name in the draw at St. Andrews and just went over and played King's Barnes and really enjoyed it. Well, everybody from our group that put their name into the draw ended up being able to play early at St. Andrews and got to play both places. So I've never played St. Andrews. So I'd like to get over there and be able to play at St. Andrews. And I'd really like to take a trip over to Ireland. I've heard unbelievable things about Ireland. On the way to Scotland, we stopped in Dublin for like 6 hours as a layover, and we got to go to some of the pubs and take a tour of a castle and things like that. But I've never played over there, so I've heard just amazing things for that. So I'd like to take a trip over there. Whether or not that's going to happen, I think ultimate bucket list would be Australia.
That's a long flight.
That's a long flight.
You got to talk yourself into that one. That's a tough one.
Right. But, playing some of those places that you see on TV, and I think that would be the ultimate bucket list. In terms of in the States, I've never played Cyprus. I'd like to play Cyprus. Obviously, Augusta, I've never been there. But those are two things that, most likely won't ever play at those places. It'll just be, something that might be a hope and a dream one day.
Sure. Yeah. Final one to get you out of here. We have a lot of amateurs, like I said, listen to the podcast. They're always looking for different ways to trim a couple shots off of their handicap, maybe get ready for a member guest, get ready for a club championship. You have limited time with your career. You got the family, you have a busy tournament schedule. What are some things that you do to kind of sharpen up your game in preparation for tournaments that kind of gets you ready with limited time?
I hit a lot of golf balls. I don't play that often when I'm back home. So I use my time, and I really enjoy practicing. I don't know how great it is, but I enjoy, putting some headphones in and hitting balls for, hour and a half, something like that. In terms of with limited time, in order to prepare for anybody, whether you've got a big match against your buddies coming up or whatever, make time each practice session, even if it's only for an hour or 45 minutes. If you practice for 45 minutes, hit balls for like 20 minutes, get in some putting and make sure to get in some short game work. Don't just live on the range and just whack one ball after the other. Spread it around.
That's probably why you've been at the level you're at. That's why you played in numerous USGA championships. Well, Todd, I really appreciate you taking the time to join us today at the back of the range. I know you got a lot of tournaments and a lot of things coming up this year. I know you're getting ready to head over to Bandon Dunes, I believe, with your buddy Scott Harvey. So good luck with that. Good luck with the entire season. We'll follow you and see how things go at the US 4-ball. And again, thanks for stopping by.
Thanks, Ben. I appreciate it.
And there you have it, another great episode here at the back of the range. Special thanks to Todd Mitchell for joining us this week. Best of luck to everyone at Nationals. Best of luck to everyone at the US 4-ball. And best of luck to my friends and I. Hopefully we can survive Casa de Campo. It's unlimited food and drinks and golf. And oh boy. Anyway, we'll see you next week for episode 76 here at the back of the range.